What is Aquarian Anarchy? What is Aquarius? What does it mean to be Aquarian? What does anarchy mean? All of these questions and more will be answered tonight. Let's go. This show is so important. Marcus dressed up. Our quote for tonight is from Marcus himself. Aquarian Anarchy investigates the idea that we own ourselves. No person, group of people, government, God, or spirit has legitimate authority over anyone. Voluntary cooperation in love, compassion, and freedom is the only ethical way to organize society. And with that, my friends, welcome to What is Aquarian Anarchy? This is like our signature episode 130. It only took us 130 episodes to figure out who we are and what we're doing. No, I'm just joking. We actually had quite a bit of an inquiry. What's that, Nicco?
It's like a rapper figuring out their voice, you know.
That's right. Right. Yeah, my voice is like Pop Smoke. That's what I like
to I like smoking, so it'll be all right.
It's for the steak. Oh, anyway. So we have our chat. Shout out to the Telegram group. Shout out to the patrons on our Patreon. If you want to join, $5 a month gets you into that Telegram group. So you can see all the links are in the description, and you can go there and check that out. There's some really good conversations that we have in there. And the other thing is too, I want to say, because we don't talk about this, I don't think we've ever really discussed it in this way. Like usually we've talked about some of the gems that get dropped in there and the really good information sharing, but there's a lot of support in there too. And I think that's a really important part of what it means to be part of this project and what we all, I think, in a certain way kind of mean to each other. Because it's not just the three of us on screen. We got a team behind us of people who really are interested in the ideas, care about the idea of finding their own voice and their own personal freedom and what that means and how to navigate and live that in their lives when this statist paradigm is so pervasive and so destructive to those aims. I think it's also really important to start to explore some of those ideas together. And do it in a way where we kind of, as best as we can, try to satisfy as many of those curiosities as we can. So Marcus, this was kind of the idea. Like this started off with some questions that came up in the Anarch chat on Telegram, and it's kind of been something that we've been exploring how to attack, and this gave us a perfect opportunity.
Sure. And I want to kind of second what Chad said. We're individuals, and each person has their own strengths. But when you start, and I'm not really a collectivist, I don't think that people should come to, be forced to come together because they're black, white, pink, purple, or they're women, or they're gay, or they're straight, or they're all. I don't want people into those things. But we are stronger when we come together. That's just a fact. If you want to, if you got one dude on a tug of war on one side and a bunch of other people on the other side, the people with a bunch of people or the side with a bunch of people are going to win. And so that's just the facts. So life works in that way too. And so again, I want to second what Chad said. So do we want to kind of give like the breakdown of how we got started to kind of get it eased into answering questions and those kinds of things?
Yeah, sure. What do you mean by how we got started? Like how the show got started?
Yeah.
That's what I handed it off to you. I was going to let you do
that. Okay. That's what I'm supposed to be doing.
You are the founding father of this channel and this whole concept of Aquarian Anarchy. All this I don't know, Zodiac stuff was kind of weird to me. And then I met you and now Nicco. and you guys have helped me to kind of understand that stuff a little more, maybe in a deeper way, but also in a way that kind of undoes maybe some of the taboo stuff around all that. But yeah, go ahead and give the origin story here.
Sure.
This is the reboot.
Right.
Spider-Man was no, I'm just joking. All right, so go ahead.
And this is just the kind of the cliff notes.
Right.
The real short story, if you will, is that I was working for Adam Kokesh, and I was his press secretary, and we were doing really well. This is about 2 years into the campaign, and I realized that I might wind up in front of a camera, because if he wound up getting the Libertarian nomination, I need to be ready to talk to folks. And so I started looking towards being able to do that. And I actually started with a program I called Voluntary Visions. Long story short, that kind of dwindled away. And I had a little side project that I called Aquarian Anarchy that was about talking about our spirituality in combination with political ideas of not having masters and those kinds of ideas. And so I wanted to present those ideas. I also wanted to have, because it's hard for me to just go on for an hour about stuff. I need to converse with people. A conversation is more my style than like I'm just giving a long recitation of something. So anyway, so I wanted people to come on, and the two people that I had talked to initially to come on just basically ghosted me. The great guys, both of them are friends, but they went away. And then at one point, Chad reached out to me and said, "Hey," and this is after COVID started. "Hey, I ain't got nothing to do. You want me to come on the show?"
We were moving. Everything was locked down and shit. Like it was kind of wild. The kids and wife were home from school all the time and everything. And I was like, look, we're unpacking, or we're packing stuff up. But other than that, like, I ain't got shit. So like, let's do it.
Right. And so, so I said, sure. And we did a few shows, just the two of us, covered articles and did different stuff that we still do occasionally.
Nicco disappeared because we were about to talk about him.
Right. And now he'll be back.
Where'd he go? It says his devices are not connected, whatever that.
Yeah, I don't know. He'll be back. So, and I am going to go ahead and get this out of the way so that we're not bogged down by history. But long story short, Nicco came about because he had watched one of our shows, thought we were interesting, and Chad had talked about that they had a conversation about spirituality afterwards, and Chad was like, "You need to talk to Marcus," because
Marcus and I had done an episode earlier that week where we hung up the Zoom call because we were recording on Zoom at that time, and we had a 2-hour conversation unrecorded about spirituality, about faith, about Jesus and voodoo and all kinds of stuff intermingled and everything. And that's where I was like, bro, like, I talked to Nicco and we had this long conversation ourselves. I was like, you got to come on and you got to talk to my homie Marcus. I think y'all would really connect. And so he came on and just kind of, it was more like to probe Marcus and ask questions and everything. And then it became, Nicco. Well, he usually is a co-host on the show, but he, I don't know,
dropped out for some reason.
He'll be back. Hopefully we'll have Nicco back in the flesh again here shortly.
For sure. And so, what wound up also happening is Chad and I had made a bunch of connections to people in the freedom movement. And we decided, let's throw these ideas out. One of the things that we early on started focusing on was solutions. And because lots of people like to talk about told you Nicco's coming
there
back.
He is.
But they like to talk about, stuff, but they don't offer any solutions. They don't, okay, how does this work out?
Yeah, lots of complaining and lots of doom and gloom and all that kind of stuff. Lots of like, here's the problem. There's problems everywhere. Look at all the problems. And it's like, all right, so what do we do? Like, right. There's a lot of us out here who are just trying to figure this out. This is like bullets are coming, a million miles a second, and you're trying to dodge them while you're feeding your family, while you're doing all this other stuff. And we needed to try to start digging into that.
For sure. And Nicco, just so you know, we covered you coming in, and we're kind of where we are. So that's the history.
And then Nicco appeared.
Right. and so that's kind of the history of Aquarian Anarchy. And from there, the questions start arising. And Chad, you had kind of worked something up. Is this a good place for you to share that?
Yeah, I can go ahead and start digging into it. But welcome back, Nicco.
Hi. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, it's a little bit muffled.
Wait,
Sounds like you're.
What is Aquarian Anarchy? Technical difficulties. That's Aquarian Anarchy all time.
I think you might be. Maybe you're on the wrong mic in StreamYard or something.
Oh, you know what? I think.
It sounds like it's like your desk is picking up noise and stuff like that too. All right, so I'm gonna while you're figuring that out.
Can you guys hear me now?
That's it.
Absolutely.
Well, you got it now. There it is. Yeah, my man. So what is Aquarian Anarchy? Well, let's get into the fundamentals. Let's start right here. Start from the start, and it's something very, very simple and fundamental. Who owns you? Do you own yourself? Does someone else own you? Do others own you? Does God even own you? And you have to really ask yourself these questions. And so as this, I think it's really important to mention that while we're doing this this particular episode, if you're watching this on a replay, this is a good time to maybe if you've never considered these concepts before, is to just directly pause the recording and directly ask yourself those questions. Who owns me? Do I own myself? Do other people own me? And does God even own me? And that last question is something that we'll get into a little later on, because that's more about the kind of the spiritual aspect of this. But it does what I think helps first is to get people to at least consider the idea of whether or not human beings should own other human beings. Right?
Yeah.
And so the thing that I said all right, if you answered anything other than I own myself to those questions, then you probably don't need to go any further, and you need to reconsider that question, or you just have to recognize that you kind of gave yourself away to other people, either unwittingly or perhaps voluntarily.
I mean, it's more so unwittingly. Everybody who they get finessed. The majority of the people get finessed into giving themselves away and not paying attention to it, because it's been indoctrinated to always question. Never question, just follow. And just wait till the bells ring, and once the bells ring, you're dismissed, or you can go do something else with your life. But only until an authority figure gives you that permission.
Yep. No, absolutely. And it's like the unwittingly relinquishing your autonomy is like this self-fulfilling prophecy of well, no, I don't own myself, but other people don't own me. And it's but if you don't own yourself, then you kind of are giving in to that other people own you thing. And so then we have to start talking about either neglect that you've given yourself away, your ownership of yourself away through neglect by not asserting your self-ownership, or you voluntarily said, and that's where I would get into the thing about God, is that I recognize, this is just for me, this is me speaking, I recognize that God created me and maintains my existence through his action, through his actively keeping me alive, because I can't keep myself alive. At any moment, a meteor could hit me or whatever could happen. So recognizing that, I can voluntarily adhere my will to his.
Sure.
And give some of that self-ownership to him to say, you know what, take this from me and lead me where you want to lead me, because I know that if I try to do this all by myself, I'm going to fuck it up.
Sure.
And that's different from him, you know, with a whip to my back, ordering me to do stuff and beating me along the way, and it being this tyrannical authoritarian type of relationship.
Sure. And I think that people miss that there's a difference between, I don't think God owns anything. God doesn't worry about ownership, in my opinion. You know, he just is. You know, to me, God, yeah. To me, God just is. So for me, in my personal spiritual understanding, God doesn't own anything, or God owns everything because he's the ultimate consciousness.
Well, I think the coolest thing about my understanding, as I have, I should say, not the coolest thing about my understanding of God, but the coolest thing that I have come to understand about God is that, like, to your point, he doesn't own anything, but it's not because he can't or shouldn't. It's because he gives it as a gift. And once he gives it as a gift, that's why I own myself.
That's the
my
free
life.
will.
My life and my free will was his
Free
gift
will.
to me. And how can I, with that gift given to me, say that he still owns it?
Right.
No, he gave it to me. It's a gift to me. And now it's my responsibility to make the most of that gift and to do that gift justice. And then if I choose to return that gift for the glory of him and the kingdom, and to help humanity and to love my neighbor, then that's a whole different ballgame. But it's not this God owns me and therefore he's steering me around, because then it's not love. Like, God created us and these gifts were given freely and relinquished, because the act of love only happens voluntarily. It's not love if someone's got a gun to your head saying, if you don't love me, I'm going to kill you. That's just like
Stockholm syndrome right there.
That's you pretending like you love someone.
Yeah,
so Nicco, you started to say something, and then I kind of came in. What were you about to say?
Oh, you know how this goes. More than likely forgot it. Let's see. No, the act of free will is what God given us, and therefore, if God has given us free will, then how, in any right sensical mind, would we be able to say that, like, he owns us? Like, somebody giving you your choice and you being able to do what you please to do. Granted, there's rules and ethical rules and moral rules you got to follow along, but other than that, like, you can do whatever you please. I don't think that's somebody saying you have to do what I want you to do. That's somebody saying do what you want to do and do it freely. But, you know, just understand that, I guess when Chad saying, you give yourself to me, so giving myself to you, giving my time, my devotion, and my love to you, that's also a part of your free will. But that's if you want to establish that discipline in your life and follow towards a loving way of life, if you will.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
On the thing about, like, free will and some of these rules, so to speak, or like laws, the laws of nature, I want to draw an important distinction. I think that sometimes people get confused and they think, well, that's the same thing. That's still authoritarian, because if there's laws of, like, if you do this, then there's these consequences. Consequences are only given by authority figures who, are trying, prison guards and, principals and teachers and all this other kind of crap. Like, no, if I hit my finger as hard as I can with a hammer, it will smash my finger. It will probably break it. My nail will turn black. I will probably lose the nail. It will bleed, most likely. It will hurt like hell. That is the consequence of smashing my finger with a hammer. I am free to smash my finger with the hammer. However, there is a consequence.
Right. And I think that's the thing that people miss. To kind of draw it back to the definitions, if you will. Mm-hmm. Anarchy is just for simplicity's sake, is no rulers. No, I don't have some king, some potentate, none of those people. I don't recognize their authority whatsoever. They may impose their authority or their supposed authority, but I don't recognize it. That's not real. They don't have a right to rule over other people, because all rulership is owning, and they don't have a right to that. And so we talk about anarchy, and people, have been trained to think that it means chaos, because the implication of that is that without some ruler, without some government, without some master, with the whip, we couldn't possibly have, I don't know, World War III, nuclear bombs, or things like that. The state tells us that what causes that we have all of this chaos is lack of control. And by control, I mean from someone else. I want to return real briefly to what Mark Passio said, that outward anarchy is freedom and inward anarchy is chaos, because we have to control ourselves. I don't recognize the authorities that are above. Correct. But I recognize myself and my needs and those natural laws that bring goodness into our life. And I try to follow them.
Yeah. So I'll continue with what I wrote earlier today. So I said, the rest of this discussion, so now that we've established that you own yourself, do other people own themselves? Or should you at least assume that they own themselves and offer them the same type of respect that you would expect to be offered to you? Do you live by the golden rule, the greatest commandment, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind, and all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself? Or better yet, to love your neighbor as God loves you, or as Christ loves you? And I'm appealing to like the Christians in that statement there, but this could be for. I think that golden rule is somewhat universal.
Yeah, no, it's very universal. Like, why wouldn't I want you to treat me like I treat you? So it's like, if I want to, like, if I want to spit on you and then turn around and like try and spit on myself, that's not fun. Like, that's not going to be cool. Why would I even bring myself to that kind of point, or to that kind of ethic of thinking? Like, that's not productive. So therefore, do your best and treat yourself with the utmost. So that means taking the time and actually taking care of yourselves, because too many people, such as myself, run with no head on their shoulders, and they don't set things in line to take care of themselves instead of taking care of other people and making sure that I get the things done for myself taken care of. So make sure that you take care of your health as well, and everything as well, mental and physical. Don't sleep on that, because it's very easy to get sidetracked and to continue running on, because we are machines at the end of the day. So if you never give yourself time, a break, and chill out with the Holy Spirit, get right with your mind, get right with yourself, you're just going to continue to keep running into wall after wall after wall. And people don't recognize it in reality. So always take care of yourself up to the holiest and highest degree, such as Christ would. So therefore, you can continue to live out a Christ-like society. It's not difficult. Take care of yourself, because if you hurt yourself in any factor or to a detrimental degree, you can't help out anybody else.
For sure.
So,
and just so people that know, that might be watching this, that haven't watched us before, one of the things you need to understand is that we're not going to shy away at all from these spiritual topics. You better get used to it. If you like Aquarian Anarchy, you better get used to some spiritual topics, because we're going to cover that, because it's important to us. Now, you've heard a lot about Jesus. I'm not a Christian. I believe in God, and I believe very deeply spiritually, but I have a wonderful relationship with the Voodoo Loa, and that's not going to go away. And so at the end of the day, we talk about spirituality just like we talk about freedom. We wipe away the bull crap that gets people divided and dive into what keeps people united.
Oh yeah, that's another big thing that we like to do, is we talk on the taboo subjects, because one thing they tell you not to do, like when you go to parties, is don't talk about politics, don't talk about like religion, and don't talk about like, you know,
Money.
everything else about
Yeah,
like,
money. It's money, politics, and religion. And I'm like, nope,
the
talk about
thing
all
is,
of them.
like, all
Right,
three of
all
them
the time.
go hand in hand. All of them go hand in hand. Well,
That's
majority of spirituality and science, that shit goes hand in hand. You can't separate it. One just explains the metaphysics, and then one is actual physics. So it's hand in hand. So don't separate.
Yeah. What's funny is that if you watched Hotep Jesus and Jeff Charles yesterday, they had a discussion on like white power, black power, and like the dynamics, you know, power dynamics and all that stuff. And it's always funny to me because it seems like whoever came up with that idea that you shouldn't talk about that stuff, I think was saying it in order to keep you from talking about the stuff that they talk about at all their parties all the time.
Yeah.
Because they're like, listen, do you know how powerful we are because we talk about politics, religion, and money all the time at all of our secret meetings? Tell these people never to talk about that stuff because it's going to destroy their relationships. Because what we want them to doubt each other and to not talk about that stuff. And so they'll think they're hiding stuff from each other. They'll always be envious. Yes, they'll be envious of each other, and instead of talking about that stuff, they'll be like wondering and just suspecting about their friends and family, and then we'll just make them, you know, at each other's throats about this stuff all the time. I think that it's what it does is instead it makes it to where, like, if that stuff does come out, there's so much pent up angst that it does create some of that strife. Whereas I think if you notice, like the way that we have been talking about this stuff for almost 3 years now, like we're maybe, I don't know, a little over 2 years, I guess. But anyway, we talk about this stuff. We talk about this stuff, and we've never fought about it.
Right.
And we have very different views on this stuff. Like, I have a very different worldview as far as spirituality is concerned. Now, we have a very similar worldview about politics, but we also are like very different in like where we are in our careers and like and where like financially and stuff like that. So it's not. But I think we've all helped each other out when we need to, and we have all kind of been there for each other as a sounding board and as a support structure, recognizing that, like, Marcus is one of the people who, even with the fact that he continues to repeat over and over again, like we don't already know that he's not a Christian. He says it every episode like 10 times. No, I'm just joking. But no, Marcus is one of the people who reminded me when I was going through a rough patch, because the way that the church had responded to all of the authoritarianism in 2020 was very disappointing to me and very disillusioning to me. He reminded me not to lose that, and not to lose some of the rituals that were very important parts of like bringing the spiritual into the physical for me, so that I could remain anchored to that stuff. And that has had a profound impact on me remaining grounded where I needed to be and not going completely off into la la land and just going down some weird rabbit holes that would have probably been destructive for me. So that's the kind of stuff, when you actually talk about this stuff, but you do it and you come at it from a compassionate standpoint, that's where that stuff can lead you, instead of this nonsense about like, don't talk about that stuff. Just pretend like it doesn't exist. And I don't know, just talk about the Kardashians.
Yeah,
that's
stuff
the
that
bullshit.
doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
so,
in what it is it is the state for their own good. You're correct about that, I think. But what they're doing is they're monopolizing conversation. And because all the state likes to do is monopolize, and it's everything. Whether they're monopolizing murder or they're monopolizing money, they're trying to monopolize everything. And so they're just trying to monopolize conversation, because they know that if we get together and we have discussions, we get at the truth. Whether we're talking about any of those subjects, whether we're talking about money, like you can, several years ago, Adam Kokesh told me to look into Bitcoin. I wound up doing it, and it is my safety net right now. If something crazy happens, I still have money that I because I invested money, thanks to Adam suggesting that. but and it works with the others as well. All it is monopolization. And like all things, the freer an economy is, the freer the people.
Word. All right. So proceeding from our own autonomy, and let's talk about the best way to respect and preserve the autonomy of our neighbor. So we are told, are we not, that the best way to preserve the autonomy and freedom and the rights of everybody is to set up this big monstrosity that they call government to protect everyone's rights. And the way that you protect everyone's rights is by trampling everyone's rights roughly the same amount, but there's some give and take there, where like some people get really, really oppressed and other people just get a little bit oppressed, and other people seem to not get oppressed at all. They do all the oppressing, but it's okay because it's all about, equality, and sometimes that's necessary because not all animals are equal. Some are more equal than others.
Right.
So anyway,
Animal Farm.
Yeah. Shout out to Animal Farm. Shout out to Ken and Hotep, who turned, I think, 38 today. No, for sure. Yeah, 38 today. He was born in 1984, and so I told him his name should be Hotep Orwell. But anyway, so when is it okay for someone to use force, fraud, or coercion to achieve their goals, whether they be social, political, or personal? These are really important questions. And again, I urge you, if this is something, when you're watching the replay of this, if you haven't really considered this, pause this and really think about that and ask yourself that question. When is it okay for someone to use force, fraud, or coercion to achieve their goals, whether they be social, political, or personal? How many of your personal interactions on a day-to-day basis are either violent, coercive, or fraudulent? Again, if you need to, pause it and really think about that. Think about how much of your daily life is actually carried out practically anarchistic, with no rulers, no one telling you how to do it, how you must do it. Now, are there some things that enter into your thought process? You're driving down the road, how you're driving, how fast you're driving. Yeah, you consider like the speed limit because you don't want to get a ticket and shit like that. But by and large, your interactions with other individual people, that shit does not enter into it.
Right.
But maybe I'm wrong. This is for you to pause and think about yourself.
Sure. I want to again,
go ahead.
Something that Mark Passio said that I really kind of struck home is he was talking about natural rights, and he used terminology that was different, and he defined rights as things that you do that don't hurt anybody. Mm-hmm. That it is impossible to hurt someone. It is a right to own things, for instance. It's you're not hurting nobody by owning your own shit.
Right.
And so that, I thought that was a really insightful way at looking at what is a right and what is not a right. It is not a right to healthcare, as an example, because you're hurting the doctor who has to give away things for free because he's not going to get paid. And I know that we sometimes have to dumb this down for people from California, but
well, hey, look, man, they can't watch this show right now anyway because the power's off.
Right, for sure, because the state's wonderful.
That or their house is hot as shit and their computer just overheated, so they can't watch it for that reason.
Right?
No, so all due respect and love to the people of California. We don't mean to clown you. Just your government.
Yeah, I do.
So. God help them. Oh, jeez. All right. So were you going to continue or
no? That's good.
Okay. So when is it okay for someone to use force, fraud, or I already read that. Okay. How often do you find that your personal interactions go best when you start with aggression?
Right.
versus cooperation? If you go up to I don't know, your best friend and say, "Listen, you punk motherfucker, I'm going to beat your ass if you don't come over here and shake my hand." No, that's not generally how it happens, right? So
right. Well, in cage.
Okay, listen. I'm not talking about like tongue-in-cheek type stuff.
Oh
Where it's
yeah,
just
no,
like
like
with the homies
on
and
the
everything.
street, I
It's
wouldn't
like,
do that. But like,
yeah,
with
like
homies, I get mad aggressive. Like, come here, like, come show me love, come embrace me. But
what's up, pump? Yeah,
Yeah.
I know what you mean. Yeah,
Right,
Much
but
more
you're not
aggressive.
meaning that shit.
No.
But so I'm saying this because the reason why I put this question in here is because Hotep Dutch dropped a video in the Anarch chat this morning that really touched on this, where this ATF group goes to this guy's house and starts asking him if he bought something that they use as a silent or a suppressor, and just starts asking all these questions. And it's this very aggressive approach. Very like as soon as he says like, I'm not answering any of your questions, they start with all this very snide, threatening type of language and all this, and it's just like, this is how those things go. And so there's a spirit of distrust and like animosity that is built right off the jump. And to be truthful, like if we understand the nature of these organizations, just when they show up with the ATF gear on or the, the police show up or whatever, there's this heightened level of tension. Yeah, for sure. There's this heightened level of tension that that starts the whole interaction off. I remember talking about this when Ahmaud Arbery was killed, and they brought up this old video of him. He was sitting on the side of the road. I guess he was like smoking marijuana in the car, but he was actually like playing a song, and like he was laying down some bars. Like he was practicing his flow on this track. Okay. So he's sitting in the car on the side of the road, and that's what he's doing. He's smoking weed and he's practicing his craft. I don't know if he was a good rapper or not. Doesn't matter. The point is, he's not hurting anyone. He wasn't hurting anyone. The police officer approaches the car, and he's, hand on holster, walking up with this whole, it's already starting off as, now, why do you just assume that I'm walking up on this car that's sitting here not doing anything? Therefore, I must fear for my life, and I must walk up to the car with my gun on my holster. The only reason you would do that. Now, first of all, if you saw that on the side of the road, Marcus, you would either not approach the car because it's none of your business, or if you saw someone in there, maybe from a distance, you just kind of make eye contact and be like, "You good? You need help?"
Like,
that kind of thing.
Yeah, you need me to stop? I need
help. Right. You need help. You good? But it's not going to be, you're going to walk up gun drawn or something like that. Like, hey, listen, I wasn't going to come by here, but since I am, I'm going to assume that you're trying to kill me. And so I'm going to come at you like you're trying to kill me. So there's that energy that starts off the interaction that I think is, and so that's why I posed that question that way. Like, how often do your personal interactions work out well when you start off with aggression and like this altercation type of mentality and approach versus cooperation?
Yeah.
And again, if you need to pause and consider this question, you shouldn't have to, but just in case.
Talking about it reminds me, if anybody has ever seen, because I'm a nerd, so just be prepared. If anybody has seen Babylon 5, the series, and if you haven't, it's one of the best sci-fi series out there. But the spoilers, so be prepared. It comes down to a battle between the Vorlons, who are like order, and the shadows, which are chaos. And one of the things the shadows do is they manipulate and they control. And now it winds up that because the point of the kind of the series is that order and chaos are a dichotomy that it's false, and you need to actually be in the middle. But what the shadows did, what you were talking about reminds me, is they always had that foot on aggression, even if they're being sly and they're trying to do something covertly, then they still are doing aggressive things.
Mm-hmm.
So it just reminded me of that.
Yeah. So then the next question is, because this is kind of the line of questioning that I try to go through with every statist as we're talking about these things. Sometimes it gets difficult because like the interaction, the back and forth makes it to where you spend a lot of time on one particular topic, and then it just kind of goes off the rails and ends up in all this like, what are you going to do about this? And what are you going to, and all this kind of stuff. So if I can ever actually get there, this would be the next question that I would ask in this line of questioning, which is, what is it about certain activities that make violence, threats, theft, manipulation, and fraud necessary? And Michael made a good clarification, not just manipulation, but because I think sometimes manipulation in an ethical sense is not necessarily like, sometimes you're just trying to convince someone of something, and it's actually not, you're not being deceitful or anything like that. This is more of like dishonest manipulation, where you are trying to use someone's better judgment against them. That's not the case here. This is appealing to their better judgment to try to get them off of poor judgment onto something that's better. But it's so anyway, like, what is it about certain activities that make violence, threats, theft, deceit, and fraud necessary? And so, because that's where we get to some of this stuff where it's like, well, no, it's not okay to steal unless somebody does it.
Mm-hmm.
Taxation is not theft. It's like, we just, we're taking some money from you that, we all agreed that we can take from you. And it's taken from all of us. Like, is it really? I don't know. So just, think about some of those things about how certain activities are permissible for certain people in certain circumstances, not permissible in other circumstances. And what I'm not talking about when I say these activities that are permissible for some and not for others, what I'm not talking about is the activities like, for instance, shooting someone, stabbing someone, grabbing someone and taking them to the ground, where if that person is trying to murder my child, I'm fully justified in stopping them from an act in self-defense at that point, or in defense of a vulnerable person. What we're talking about is stuff where aggression is initiated. Mm-hmm. So initiation of aggression versus response to aggression with an equal and opposite reaction of defense. Those are two completely different things.
For sure. And, lots of people like to make justifications for a lot of these things. The bottom line is, if you do happen to be a Christian, or for that matter, Jewish or Muslim, any of the Abrahamic faiths, most faiths actually have this idea, but it's most familiar from the Ten Commandments. But God didn't say thou shalt not kill unless you dress people up in fancy clothing and, march them out and kill each other over a flag. That's not in there. It says thou shalt not kill. And, war is murder, and it's murder at a huge scale. Mm-hmm.
And it's generally done under the guise of some sort of defensive action, when it's actually, like the meme says, where there's this map pointing to Iraq, and it's like, why are my freedoms over there? They're fighting for our freedom. Mm-hmm, right. In Iraq and Afghanistan and Yemen and Syria.
Here.
Yeah. And I heard one of these UK, she's like the new PM or whatever, Liz Truss or whatever. Yeah. She was talking about how, what did she say? Fighting something. It was the same kind of shit where it's like, we're going to fight it over there so we don't have to fight it over here, or vice versa. It was very bizarre. So could those same activities that we're talking about, like funding things or protecting ourselves, or making roads, all these different things, could those activities be conducted, and could the same goals be achieved through cooperation instead of threats, violence, theft, coercion, all this other stuff? And so that's kind of the statism versus anarchism part of what I kind of put together. The rest of the stuff goes into more of this relationship with God, and I think we kind of already tackled some of that stuff with regard to is God an anarchist? Is God an authoritarian statist? Or, is God an advocate of democracy? I would think that the last question is pretty obviously a no.
Right.
God is not like, whatever y'all think is all right. As long as 51%, 50 plus 1% of y'all believe it,
right.
It's all good. If y'all wanna say that I don't get to like keep things in existence anymore and y'all got it, all right, I'll step away. And then all of a sudden everything collapses and dies because he just like lets his hand off the if you think about like the omnipotent force that keeps the universe together.
The ecosystem.
If we just voted him out of office and said, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah, I don't like things are running up there. We're just gonna have to.
We just said, no, we got this.
Right.
Fuck you, dude. And then he was just like, all right. And he just
right.
Man. Talk about Atlas Shrugged.
Right. Right, for sure.
The whole
God's Atlas Shrugged all over the place, man.
Yeah, the whole universe collapses in on itself. So that was that. So we're 45 minutes in. I just wanted to kind of give a primer for like how I think we arrived at where we are and how what our worldview is and how we view our relationship as human beings with one another and our relationship with that cult of omnipotent state that exists out there, that somehow it is God and not us.
Yeah.
Dutch said national disasters are illegal now.
Right, for sure.
That's good. Oh, and I like just Jay too. Animal Farm Ben told you. That's right.
That's right.
Damn right. Yeah.
So I want to kind of shift because we've covered what anarchy is and the Aquarian stuff. If you haven't figured it out yet, Aquarian is rebellion. It is spirituality. It's those kinds of ideas. We're supposed to be going into the Aquarian age. I just learned today, which is fun, that an influence on me, a woman named Alice Bailey, who was a student of Blavatsky, which not to get into the weeds too deep. Anyway, she believed and foresaw through spiritual means a world without a government. She, in essence, was an anarchist, which I found interesting. So largely the Aquarian side of the equation is that we tackle the spiritual side of things, which we have largely done thus far in this episode.
There's a spirit attacking Nicco's computer right now.
Right, for sure. But what I want to get into, I think this is a good time to do so, is our solutions.
Are we going into the Anarch chat?
We can.
Are we okay? So,
but I was thinking I want to get into like some of the solutions that we have, and then we can get into the area that we do have, and then we can get it because some of the stuff is not going to be covered in that, that we went through, but like Jimmy Dawson had said flat out, why don't we talk about what anarchy is, which we've done. So that's been covered from the Anarch chat as an example. But I want to start getting into solutions and how we get there, because lots of people like to say, okay, all this theory is fantastic, but we have a state. There's the evil occultocracy everywhere. And come on, did you pay attention to COVID? People are begging to be enslaved.
I tried not to pay attention to it, but
right. But
try to ignore it all the time.
But people are want solutions.
Yeah, word.
So the first thing I want to talk about with solutions, and then I'll let the two of you kind of take it past that, is that one of the things we don't do is say, oh, freedom's gonna suck. I've heard it 1,000 times, and there's a bunch of different emanations. When you get to anarchy, it's gonna be terrible, or you're not gonna have your television, or you're not gonna have, you have to learn to live off the grid, and da 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 da. No, you don't. Again, it comes back to those questions that Chad talked about. What we need to start doing as a community when we're talking about anarchy is saying, no, anarchy just means that people aren't telling you. And it also doesn't mean that we don't have rules. If your community it decides to do something, because I do believe in community. I believe voluntarily that we can come together and work together. And would I want it to be completely separated from my community? Absolutely. I'm an anarchist. I want to eventually be completely and totally self-sufficient, but I'm not there yet. And until I am, I'm going to need a community. So we need to stop with the idea, just a second, with the idea of telling people that freedom is going to suck, because that's not true.
It's difficult to hold it together, because it's, obviously part of the problem is that we have been placated to death. When you're coddled, it seems like it's easier because you're like, all the shit's being taken care of for you. But the thing is, like, do you want to live in a womb forever? Or would you like to get out and walk around a little bit and go climb the mountains and swim in the oceans and all that stuff? So that stuff requires some effort and some work, and everybody's not going to do everything. Somebody else isn't going to do everything for you. But what I will say is, you were saying about like being completely self-sufficient but that you need a community because you're not there yet. I would suggest that the way that we work best as humans is, I don't think we're ever meant to be completely self-sufficient, because we can't be the best. We can't be the best at everything. Yeah. Well, no, I'm saying like, you can't be the best at making clothes and making computers and making food. And you know what I mean? Like, at some point we've got to do what we do best and what God has created us for and called us to. And then work with people. That's what's been so awesome. That's what was so great. Taylor and P-Dog Knight and I, and I think, well, Jonathan was there obviously, but like, I think maybe AG was in the building too, that we were talking about like how all of this stuff, because Taylor had asked me the night before, like, well, what about, Canon's got guns, and Canon, if he wants to, he could just come steal all my video equipment because he's got the guns to overpower me. And I'm not like, that's not my mentality. Isn't, I'm going to work out all the time in the gym and be real strong and learn all these weapons and learn how to use them and buy them all. And all. It's like, I do that. And I was like, but here's the thing. Why hasn't Canon come and stolen all your shit yet? Because you make videos for Canon and you make little video effects and stuff like that for Canon. You guys have figured out how to work as a community where what you do well, Canon needs and can benefit from. And then when what Canon knows how to do well, you can benefit from, because if we did have our own little Hotep Wakanda or whatever, like, then we've got our gun guys, we've got our food people, we've got our nutrition and medicine people, we've got our leadership people, we've got musicians, we've got people who make things, we got Kamar doing like all kind of, building computers. Like we've got a squad. And everybody clowns Aquaman, but like, let's be real. Like, Aquaman, who else is gonna do what he does underwater with all those animals? Like, pause. But I mean, like, who else is gonna be able to like have dominion over that environment the way that he does? Like Wonder Woman can't be Aquaman. Wonder Woman's Wonder Woman. Superman. And granted, I know Superman can do like damn near fucking everything, but ain't that many of those people.
But they do exist.
So that was my point, is that Hotepistan. That's right, Natasha. It's having that community together that I think is part of what makes humanity beautiful.
Well, I agree, but largely, what I mean by that, I won't need, like, I want to be able to like collect my own water, so I don't have to be hooked up to the water system in the town and all of that kind of stuff. That's stuff I want to do, but to my point from earlier, We need to be able to get people who just want to sit on the couch, eat ho-hos, and watch Netflix. Those people, Nicco's like, I'm one of those.
No, Nicco, man, come on, don't do that to us.
Right, but we need to be able to attract those people too. We need to be able to assure them that in an anarchist society, they can eat their ho-hos, watch their Netflix, and kick back with a big screen TV in the living room.
Yeah.
But, and what is stopping that from happening in a free world is control of the markets. Because how we get there isn't just, we talk an awful lot about localization. We talk an awful lot about, let's bring this government down to the county level, those kinds of ideas, which are the kinds of solutions that Aquarian Anarchy tends to talk about. But part of the solution as well as all of that is the free market.
Mm-hmm.
It is, letting the innovation that would happen if people weren't controlling the market. And people will say, well, you're an anarcho-capitalist. No, I'm a mutualist. In my business, me, my choice, my community, my stuff, I'm going to bring the people in and share. That's what I'm going to do. Now, when I'm trading with somebody outside of my community, oh yeah, capitalism all the way. Because that's not my community. I'm trading with somebody else. And I want fair trade, fair and free trade.
Yeah. Well, so can I bring Nicco into this? Because I want to kind of get the perspective of, so I think you and I both came to this philosophy, this worldview or whatever, when we were already pretty well entrenched in, like, we had families already. We were like trying to, we had like careers that we were trying to like find a way to like straddle. Like,
are you trying to be a nice man and say I'm a free man?
Yes. That's what I'm saying. Like, you have a freedom that we didn't have when we came to these ideas. I've got one foot in the career and the family and all that stuff.
I cannot stand. I'm sorry, my dad's hitting a golf ball at my window.
All right, maybe you're not that free.
Challenges of being young.
Yeah, but no. So I want to get your perspective on like what it's like, out in these streets. No, but really, no, but like what it's like seeing the world as you see it, and as you see this paradigm that you're faced with as a young man who's looking at like the next 60 years that you've got to hit your like max earning potential. How are you going to navigate that, and how are you, as someone who has seen this worldview and started to embrace it, and then seeing like some of the setups out there? Like, me and Marcus didn't see all that stuff, and so we fell for a lot of it. That's what I'm saying, is that like you get a chance to not fall for a lot of that stuff. And how are you approaching the world?
I'm approaching it like very slowly, but like blunt as well. Because at the end of the day, it's like there's no point in sugarcoating shit in this world anymore. It's really not. Approaching it how I am growing, I don't know. Like, I guess I only see a lot of things from like an entrepreneurial standpoint from at this point in my life. And I mean, also getting structured. I mean, seeing how life is, like not falling for the college trap. It's an eye opener. It's like a huge eye opener. Like a lot of kids who go to college, I can't say majority, but a lot that I perceive all kind of have this overall like glaze on how life is. Like it's like a film over their face to a degree, especially when it comes to certain topics. It's like I have to vet people on how I talk to them. It's like
right.
It's like however in depth I go, like if I go to this level with you guys, it means because it's like I know you can understand and digest a lot. But if I were to like even tiptoe and say, I don't necessarily believe in like climate change or something like that, just make a joke and then somebody feel appalled. And I'm like, I have to tiptoe around my worlds and being like politically correct and shit like that. It's like annoying how I have to like be very, very analytical about everything. Granted, you have to be analytical about everything, but like when it comes to like navigating like free speech right now, it's very, 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 very dangerous for a male right now, but for a young black male at this point, granted I am black and I can get freebies here and there, I still not like, there's still a fat ass target on my back. And like I've been very, very reserved until I've gotten this notion I'd rather ask for forgiveness than permission. So like how I'm emerging with that thought process is being very blunt towards a lot of this world perception on life. Like I don't like to be sweet towards, I'm a sweet guy, I'm funny and cool, but like I don't like to be sweet towards like the bullshit. Like I hate fake shit. Like I dislike it. Like there's no point in trying to like try and be cute when we know like this is not real. Stop. I don't play that. I don't play that game. So I'm very I guess uptight when it comes to like how I see the worldview and what the worldview is perceived as. It's like it's very, very it's like lighthearted. Everybody's in teehee land. Like they're all giddy and shit. And I'm like, bro, like if y'all don't like straighten up real quick, like a lot of y'all just don't see how your lackadaisical thought and ideology on how this world functions won't help. Like you have to understand Mother Nature's cute and all, but she's most definitely vicious as all fuck. Like you have to understand the real like qualities of what life presents to you. History is the biggest teller of it, and that's one of my biggest teachers. Even though it's a facade, even the facade still shows you certain things about life.
Yeah, you get to peek through it a little bit. Yeah,
just slightly, ever so slightly. And me seeing how history is like buffed up to be so fucking fake, but also the like the scarring truths of history as well, and like gleaming on my reality. It's like I'm very frustrated with how men are moving, especially my age. Pussyfooting. There's a lot of pussyfooting. Now, granted, there's shout out to King Randall. Like he's most definitely doing his shit. But that's like an anomaly.
Yeah,
I don't hear many kids my age doing that.
You're an anomaly, dude. King Randall's beyond being an anomaly. You are an anomaly.
I don't necessarily consider myself an anomaly because it's just me. But at the end of the day, even though I have certain perceptions, I'm a very understanding and open-minded individual. It doesn't change the fact that like I feel like I'm an ordinary like kid that just wants to go through trials of really being what a man is. And like I would love to understand what the reality of being a real man is, and not over this pussified ass generation, or like how the viewpoints are and how like everybody's so soft about certain things. Like we haven't had like the best sense of leadership since I don't know when. Like we can say Jesus is a great example, but like at the end of the day, like there's always a generation, from my point of view, there's always a generation that's had something stripped away from it, from what it was really when it was a natural state of what real men was. And each generation there was a scrape off of ideology, a scrape off of thought, a scrape off of how it goes. You go from me to my little brother, and you hit me, and then you hit my little brother. Our reactions are going to be two different things. You go around in each generational classroom, you can hit every little boy. Either one generation was going to bug up with you, or the other was like, ow, like they weren't.
Yeah, you saw that video that dude made, that TikTok where he's like runs into the door, and it's like
exactly
like the 70s, the 80s, and it goes all the way to and it's like,
and it's just like
it gets to the 2020s, and the kid like he's doing like an Instagram picture of himself, like crying on the floor about how he ran into the door.
And that's how, like, that's just like legit the generation of how men have become.
So what's the solution to that?
The solution would be simply just bullying people properly, disconnecting, getting away from disconnecting away from all this shit. Like, I promise you, if you were on such a simple wavelength as believing that an ancient, and I personally believe that right now, like our generation, even though we have technology and all this instantaneous shit, we are retarded compared to our ancestors. Like,
absolutely.
Or like very, very smart, and how they were able to
improve it,
map things, put things together, relay messaging, and just get those all kinds of downloads. Like, they were tuned.
I can give you a perfect example of that in real time. Like, this happens all the time. Like, if I'm not home right now, if I'm not home and some shit goes wrong with the Wi-Fi or something like that at the house, like you'd swear like it's the apocalypse.
Oh man,
it's the worst thing, and like they can't wait until I get there so that I can fix it. And like, meanwhile, like I'm just expected to like know how to fix shit, and I'm just supposed to like go around and like fix everything. And I'm like, bro, can y'all like start thinking now? My boys are getting to where they're better. Like they're still young, but they're developing. But I remember, like, I knew how to do some of this stuff. I was fixing computers and stuff like that when we had our first computer. Like, I was figuring out all that stuff. I was digging footings for our porch and stuff like that when I was a teenager.
How often do you, like, I guess, like, you and your wife were to leave prior to COVID and stuff like this? Like, how often would you leave your boys to like fend for themselves?
Like, that's my wife is a helicopter wife in a lot of ways, and I've had to really hard to break her of that. I'm like, look, you gotta. I mean,
it's got to get stripped.
You can be that way to a certain degree with my daughter, you know, but you can't. And the funniest thing about that is, like, my daughter has been very sheltered growing up, to the point that like my youngest one was like making himself breakfast when he was like 5-6 years old, and my daughter still was like, how do you make toast, you know, and shit like that. And I can't make myself but I think a lot of that was just her milking it for like, if I pretend like I don't know how to do it, do it for me.
Look.
So there's some of that.
Let me give you a little bit of, both of you gentlemen, a little bit of hope. I'm gonna tell you a story. My son, if anybody ever gets a chance to meet my wife, she is a very, very mild human being. She's very calm. She's very quiet. She is a wonderful calming influence in my life. She is like, I'm way out here talking about a bunch of crap. She's not. She keeping to herself, doing her own thing. Right. So she seldom gets angry, at least where you see it. One night, my son at 16 years old, he may have even been 17, my oldest son, wasn't even interested in getting his license. Not concerned. He wanted mom and dad to drive him around.
Everywhere.
Yeah, to go everywhere and do all that stuff. And he's getting ready to go away to college. We knew that he was going to be going to college, and we lived in a little community. There wasn't no college in our town. You know, he had to go to Indianapolis, and he was going to go far away. Well, we ain't taking him to that shit, you know, and so he needs to get his license. So one night, my wife jumped up and down screaming, "Fucking Raven! Ah!" Just madder than fire at Raven because he was not doing the crap that he needed to do.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, he did go on to do. My son right now in his mid-20s, he's like 26. My son is handling his own house. He fixes cars all by himself. He has figured out how to, I'm not a car person. He figured out how to do that all by himself. So to give you hope, Chad, he was clueless at 17. He has his shit together. I'm not saying he's perfect, but he has his shit together now. And for you, Nicco, the reason that you're like, I want to be and I want to do this is just because you haven't gone out and done it. Because once you do it, what Chad and I have learned, and this is the fact with anarchy too, to kind of draw it back in. We will figure out how to do shit without government. Do we know how to do shit without government completely? This is going to surprise people. No, I don't. I don't know everything. I don't know how this and that's going to do.
I think it's like a much simpler answer than what we need it to be.
Yeah.
Like, if you think about it, All government was just a big old parenting household. Now shrink it down to your community. Bam, simple. Now when you want to expand your community and make it into a state or something such as that, then you make all communities known and established, and everybody starts getting together. And AKA, therefore, you start the government, but everybody has initially voted it in. It's not a difficult process when you make it a family structure. That's all it is. That's all it is. It's nothing.
That's what
more.
Government wants you to think that it is, but then it, I don't remember the
Granted,
last
it's
time my
got
dad
more
stole from me.
components, but the thing is those components are.
It happens to some people.
Those components can be broken down into something digestible for people to pick up on to continue way of life, because at the end of the day, like, even though the government helps run everything and keeps the money flowing, we are the people who have the trades, who know how to trade our skill for a certain thing.
I got to push back. Government doesn't push money. All they do is take. The number one thing that government does is take. They
don't create anything. They just take
right.
what other people create and then like appropriate it.
Well,
right. And why
people?
Why can't a voluntary society, coming back to that idea, why can't we have the reason you're still in connection with your extended family is voluntary. I don't have to communicate with my sister. I have no need to do that. I voluntarily connect with my sister because she's my family. That's a community that I'm a part of, and it works voluntarily. And what winds up happening is you start adding what creates the state. I agree with you that they try very hard to make it like a family, but they don't do things families do.
No. I mean, I'm just saying, if you break the structures down, you can apply it to our perspective as a family.
Yeah, I think what he was. Were you trying to say, Nicco? Yeah, were you trying to say that like if like your family, Marcus's family, and my family kind of come together and decide like, hey, we're gonna hang out together and do something together, then like our family structure has its own like kind of
basically
ecosystem, and then we're kind of combining that, but then we still have our own autonomy as our family unit where we're like, if Nico's family does some fuck shit, we can be like, hey, yo, like we don't do that in our family. So like this is where we're either going to have to part ways or we're going to have to find a way to reconcile this, that sort of thing. Whereas
that's what I was aiming at.
When it gets too big, that those reconciliations become impossible because it's just too far distantly separated from you.
And I think that the line really does come down to, can you leave? Can you say, I'm done with this shit. Fuck you. I'm going home.
Well, you can leave New Jersey. You just have to pay a tax on the way out.
Right.
they're like, hey, we're going to need 20% of everything you have on your way out.
Well,
like,
but can you leave the United States?
No, I was merely making the joke that like, even in New Jersey's case, when you try to leave, they're like,
they want money.
We need a piece of your ass on the way out. It's wild. But wait, so what you said, I love it about like that sense of hope. But I will say this, where I was going with that was my daughter, who was not able to make her own breakfast and all that stuff when she was like, I don't know, whatever that was, 11, and my youngest one was 5, and he was making his own breakfast. Like he'd get up and do all this shit like before we woke up and stuff on Saturday morning.
Wait, did he have a cartoon that he had to catch?
Yes.
That's why.
So yeah, I know, but I'm just saying. But she had shit anyway. The point is, that same girl, 8 years later now, is 19 years old, and she's got a full paid scholarship to college. She paid her own way through physical training course, running concurrent with college, got her license as a personal trainer, and gets up at like 5:30 in the morning every day by herself and goes to the gym and like works out and then trains people and goes to college, and she's got babysitting jobs on the side too and everything. So she's find their way.
Hustler, baby.
She's definitely trying to, she wants to own her own gym. She wants to basically make it a place where girls can go that they're not going to have a bunch of dudes ogling them the whole time and like trying to smash
safe
while they're supposed to
A
be.
safe
Yeah. So because there's a lot of that where it's like you go
It
to the
makes
gym.
sense. You know, men go to the gym and end up raging with hormones and testosterone at the end of the day, and they see butt and they're like, ooh. So it kind of makes sense if you separate the two so that they feel much more comfortable.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. So Marcus, you were saying.
So I just wanted to kind of get into that we do actually have solutions. We actually do, and largely those solutions are localization, free trade, and free speech. You know, the people want to go past that stuff by being able to talk freely. You know, the things that they put into the first 10 of the amendments to the Constitution, and I'm not a constitutionalist, but the ideas that they put into that are the things we need. It's just that a piece of paper doesn't guard that. What guards that is people who are unwilling to be subservient, or people that will refuse to accept anything but freedom. And but you know, those things like free trade, like free speech, being able to communicate between people is the solution that we need to get us to real anarchy. So I want to get to the if you guys are ready, get back to the Anarch chat.
Yeah.
And we've covered largely what Jimmy had talked about in the introduction. He had kind of suggested we do this, and I think we've covered the primary questions he was talking about. What is anarchy? Those kinds of things. Michael followed up with, I want to know what the interviewee believes is meant by stand up and make a difference. Those particular things, because we say that often. So I guess I'll toss each of those to you guys. What do you mean, Chad, when you say stand up?
I assert your self-ownership. You know, that for me, stand up is I own myself, and I'm going to assert that, and I'm going to defend that. And then I'm also going to the extent that I'm capable, because sometimes, you know, that old, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I'm going to try as best I can to the people who want this and are prepared to accept the responsibility that comes with recognizing and asserting your self-ownership, is to help other people find that for themselves and to stand up themselves, I guess. So
cool. And Nicco, what would, and no, I want to give you the other one. What would you mean by make a difference? How would you make a difference?
Have some skin in the game, baby. You gotta have some skin in the game. What have you done? Have you went out and you saw somebody's car parked on the right side of the road with their hazards on? Have you even you're going 20 miles an hour and you look at them like shitty? You keep driving. Like, have you went out to a food drive? Have you went to go actually sympathize with somebody who's less fortunate with you and actually give them something? Have you went out your way and did something for the community that God didn't even ask you to? You were like, fuck it, let me do something because I can. When was the last time you went out of your way and took your resources, your time, and you gave it to a random individual? When was the last time you did that for somebody?
Nice. Love it. So I think that kind of answers those questions, because I think both of you did excellent in answering that.
Yeah. Can I add a little bit to what the thing about making a difference?
Absolutely.
I think we've done this before, but I want to. It's a good spot to bring it up again. So there's that old story that I've told about the house that we live in now. That we've been in for 2.5 years. One of the things that I love it. I love the view of the lake and everything. It's great, but there's this frame on the wall when we first went and looked at this house that really said, "Okay, this is where we need to live." It said, if you want to change the world, or you want to save the world, or something like that, go home and love your family. And sometimes that can seem like too insignificant, right? But man, what would the world look like if everybody just took care of that? Just take care of the people closest to you. Take care of your own shit. Take care of the people closest to you.
Absolutely.
And how much better that would be. And then the other part to drive it home, you've probably heard this story before. There's this little girl and she's on the beach and there's all these starfish stranded on the beach, and they're like kind of, twitching for life, but they can't, they're beached. They can't get back into the water. So there's not enough water to, for them to like swim in or whatever. And so she's walking around and she's throwing them into the water, and there's like hundreds of thousands of them, probably millions of them. And this old man is sitting in his, in his beach chair on the beach, and he's looking at her. He's like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "I'm trying to throw all these starfish back into the ocean. So I'm trying to save their lives or whatever." And he's like, he looks to his left, looks to his right, sees all the starfish, and like knows that there's no way in hell she could possibly get them all back into the water, and that some of them are probably going to wash right back up and everything. And he goes, "You cannot possibly make a difference." And she picks one up and she throws it, about 60 feet into the ocean. She's like, "Made a difference to that one."
Right.
So sometimes, like to Nicco's point, sometimes it's just that one person that needs something, that needs some help. Sometimes it's a friend that really needs some help. Sometimes it's a loved one, a family member or something. Sometimes it's just a phone call or whatever. Like it's that when you start to live like from here and from like your soul, it opens up some different possibilities for things that you might not have been considering before, because it's so easy to get caught up in the grind and get ground up in it.
For sure. What you're talking about reminds me of something that Carolyn Mace, who's a New Age writer, said. She said, we as a species want to be, that when we think about our like purpose in the world, and what we are here to do for God, we want it to be this huge thing. I'm gonna, be the next Jesus. I'm gonna be the next Buddha. I'm gonna be the next whoever that makes this wonderful world work better or whatever. She says sometimes you just need to be the you where you're at. Nothing more than that. You just need to be whatever energy, be the positive you that the world needs where you are. And I think that there's a lot to that.
Yeah, it's also like the parable of the talents, where, if you can't be trusted with small things, why would you be trusted with large things?
And ask that question of the state.
You want to save the world. You want to save the world, but you won't even like listen to your kids.
Right.
Like what? Like, no, you gotta do the little things first.
Right. For sure.
You won't even massage your wife's back, but you want to like, you want to like go feed all the hungry children all over the world. Like, oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. And Jesus covered that in the Sermon on the Mount. If you want to get that log out of somebody else's eye, how about you start with the speck in yours?
The speck in yours. Yeah. No, it's the other way around. The speck in their eye, the log in yours.
Right.
He was making the point that like, you're an asshole. So you need to get your shit right before you start talking about that.
For sure. Right. For sure. But to continue, Dutch had a really good question. This is one of my favorites, so I'll take it.
Go ahead, man.
How does anarchy fit in with religion? We've covered a little bit of this, but is God an anarchist? Does he want us to be anarchists? Yes, God is an anarchist. He does not command people to, you have to do this, this, and this. No, he says, here's free choice, and these are the better solutions. So many times we are expected to have a solution to everything, and we don't. And God doesn't say, here's all the how you do everything. These are the answers to everything that there is. He doesn't do that. What God says is, here's free choice. And what I would do if I was you is see this little rule book here, read that shit and follow these instructions. Now you don't have to. You don't have to, but you're gonna be better off if you do. And that is how God functions. And I function that way too. When I'm telling my kids, hey, this is the way that I think that you should run your life, they can tell me to go fuck off. but they're still what my experience knows how to do these things in their life, and that's what God does.
Can we pause real quick? I'm sorry.
Sure.
What the hell is going on, Sketch? What is this like whole like?
Sketch is just like writing a book in the chat.
Are you venting? Like, what is happening over here? All I saw was Adolf capitalizing. I'm like, oh, he's talking about some real stuff.
You're not supposed to say that out loud, bro.
What are you talking about? We're talking about
channel.
But all right, so let's quickly shift gears. But so I wanted to say about, like you were saying, God says, like, here's these rules of like what it would be. I would even contend that, like, let's think about it from this standpoint. So God creates us of himself in his image and likeness. And then what I think he's saying instead is, I set you free. You have free will. And what I really want is for you to love me. I love you. I just want you to love me. I want us to share in that loving relationship together. And yeah, no, I'm gonna have to go back later. We can't like host the show and read like this soliloquy that you wrote in the chat. I appreciate you writing it. Maybe someone else can read it like while we're talking, but I can't talk and think and read this stuff.
Dive in.
Like,
Same.
So all right. So I would almost say that instead what this is like, it's that what we call the rules are more like the tether. It's the crumbs that Hansel and Gretel leave to show them how to get back home.
Yeah.
It's the path back to union, because we've been separated, but we were set free, but still in communion. And in our freedom, we chose to say, yeah, you know what? Like, I like this shit better than you. And then God's like, that's fine. I don't force you to love me more than you love the things I created.
Right.
I don't force you to love me more than you love each other, even if what you call love of each other is more like lust and abuse and use of each other, and less like love, because y'all seem to be really good at like fucking around and then discarding each other and kicking each other to the curb when you're tired of each other. And that's not much like love. Like, but what I do offer you the opportunity to is to actually participate in love, participate in creation, and then make your way back to that intimate union that lasts forever with me. And so in that sense, no, like I think he's an anarchist in the sense of he is his own sovereign and the creator of the universe, but he shares that like sovereignty with us by allowing us to have our own free will, so that when we do love him and when we do align our will with his, our union with him and that relationship with him is voluntary and therefore meaningful. If it were not voluntary, it would be meaningless. It would be a useless relationship.
Yep.
What the hell is the point of a computer program and a computer programmer's relationship? There is no point except that like the computer program is doing whatever the computer program but there's no like relationship there.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing there. That's just robotic automaton type stuff. We don't want to be automatons. We are autonomous. We have our own free will, and it's when we choose, just like your relationship with your kids, just like your relationship with your wife. Like if you love someone, what you want is for them to love you back without like the force, the fraud, the coercion, the dishonest manipulation type stuff, that like all that stuff that because if you have to resort to those things, it's not love anyway.
Right.
So what's the point?
You know, it's funny. This is the silliness that is my brain. But what it reminds me of is this past weekend when we were going up to Michigan to spend time with family. The first song that came to mind, because we were playing, on the way, we were each of us choosing a song and then, going around, me, my daughter, and my wife. And the first song that came to mind was Just Like Paradise by David Lee Roth. And I told her, it's just what came to mind at the time. And so we played that, but the lyrics of that song are, "This must be just like living in paradise, and I don't want to go home." And what that reminded me of was the first time that I spent with Amber, the first time that we were together, is that love that I felt between her and me was the love that I feel from God. And so that's how I knew it was the real thing. I knew that it was the thing that would last the rest of my life, because when we see going home, when we go to heaven, that love that we get is the love that you feel that moment when you really realize this is the person that I want to spend the rest of my life with. Obviously, it's a bigger subject than that, but the core of it is the same. So I wanted to continue with Dutch's question, and I guess I'll pitch this over to Nicco. He said, "What about the animal kingdom? Are most successful animals anarchs or communists?"
I don't like that those things are separated, but anyway, go ahead, Nicco, take it.
Let's look at it. In the animal kingdom, we have, let's go to like the most basic of pride. Pride has a lion, an alpha lion, I guess, and then it has its wives and the cubs, and then the other people of the pack, or the other lions of the pack. It's kind of like a dictatorship to a degree. I mean, if you look at nature, she's a dictator.
But why is the lion in charge?
Because it was elected lion because of its ferocity. Based upon its ferocity is basically its intellect in the game, like how it wins a fight, how it domains over the entire pride, how everybody respects up to that, looks up to that lion.
Sure, it's respect, right?
It's a respect.
He earned it.
It's a respect game.
See, what it reminded me of is that question reminded me of Red Cloud. In the Sioux Nation, which if people aren't aware, the Sioux Nation waged war, a 2-year war against the United States federal government, and won decisively. The United States Army was forced to unconditionally surrender to Red Cloud. They were given everything they were told. Of course, they regrouped and attacked again, but under Red Cloud, they were soundly defeated. Red Cloud kicked the living shit out of the United States Army, and he did it with largely bows and arrows. And this is a time when they had, at some points, the revolver had come into play because it's after the Civil War. So they had much more. They had howitzers. They had much more superior weapons than the Native Americans did, than the Sioux did. Their leadership was entirely by choice. They didn't get together and elect Red Cloud. In fact, the federal government of the United States held Sioux elections that they ignored completely. They're like, come on, that's not our leader. You're stupid. But Red Cloud rose to prominence because, and to Dutch's point, insects are so small. I really don't know enough about their hierarchy to be able to converse, but I bet if we get down to it, a very similar thing to what is going on with Red Cloud, and what I think is going on with Nicco's lion is going on. And that is, again, as an anarchist, we don't believe in not having rules. We believe in rules. We believe in, and people are like, well, you're anti-authoritarian. I am anti-undue authoritarian. If somebody has proven that they know how to doctor my kids, I want that person to doctor my kids. He's the authority in that field. So what it is in those communities, and almost all animal communities are voluntary, but the Sioux Nation did not hold elections. They didn't, and there were Sioux that said, fuck is this war? I don't want nothing to do with fighting all these white people. Screw them. We're going to go hide. And that happened. But largely the reason that they waged a war that destroyed one of the, even at that time, was one of the strongest nations in the world, was because they were absolutely devoted to that leader because he was the right man for the job. And I think that that's true in nature as well.
Well, so I think sometimes we can learn a lot from the animal kingdom, right? But I think we have to recognize and separate ourselves as human beings from the animal kingdom on one very key difference, and that is that animals are ruled by instinct and by like a certain natural order that is kind of hardwired, that they don't have the
reason.
They don't have reason. They don't have that emotional intelligence type of that we have. And you see, so what you see there is you see like a kind of a combination of all of the above, I think. And I semi-object to the idea of like anarch and communists being mutually exclusive, because I think we would agree that like I think like our little 3-person podcast is fairly like communist in its voluntary sense, right? Like we share everything.
Like the word mutualist better.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, I know, but I'm just saying, like, for the terms that everybody is kind of accustomed to and understands. Like,
but we all
community, like, if you break it down,
we
like,
give our piece.
Everything is common. Like, we all kind of, we try to like share this evenly as possible. Doesn't always work out that way, but we're not like whacking people over the knuckles for doing more or doing less or whatever. In the animal kingdom, I think that so much of this stuff, because it's hardwired, it's hard to really measure and yeah, there's some merit to it, but like some of that stuff is just like you recognize, and like Adam has talked about, like it was who can lift up the biggest rock, because if you can drop the biggest rock on somebody, then you get to rule. Like you just smashed the guy who could pick up the second biggest rock. And so now the third biggest guy's like, fuck, I'm not fucking with that guy. And so that's how like some of the lion shit happens, and some of the other relationships in the animal kingdom and insect kingdom and everything kind of look similar to that. But I think what is also interesting though is that we're unique in a couple of negative ways too. So like we have this ability to reason, and we have this emotional intelligence and the spirituality that I think the animal kingdom misses. But what we also have is we have this doubt that I don't think the animal kingdom possesses. Fear and doubt are something. There's a danger response.
It's kind of
like a legitimate danger, but
flashing lights in front of them, telling them.
Yeah, right. But what I'm talking about is, think of how the animal kingdom operates with regard to like feeding themselves and providing for themselves. There's like the nature provides everything for them, unless it's the domesticated ones, and the domesticated ones are the slaves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like you can't go outside. You can't go outside. You can go outside because I put up a fence. Oh, we can't put up a fence because neighborhood restrictions. It's okay. I put up an invisible electric fence.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have this shock collar on your neck. Like there's all this stuff. You think about it, it's like, damn, these bitches in prison.
I gotta say, my cat's not. She chooses to be in the house, but I can open the door and she'd be like, "Shut that fucking thing! There's a breeze."
Right. Well, I would bring you to watch the movie Instinct, where they show that gorilla and they like open the cage up, and the gorilla won't leave the cage because he's been conditioned to just be like, no, like you've zapped me, and like the thing that the chimpanzee experiment.
Yeah.
The cat gets comfortable enough, and isn't that kind of interesting, right? That we're having this discussion about animals and humans, and like, wow, in some ways, yeah, we are similar because we can get comfortable enough to where like we will say, close that door to freedom. I don't want that.
Right.
Keep me in here where it's comfortable and I can watch Netflix. You saw this over the last 2 years. People were mad that they had to go back to work and that they had to go back outside. They're like, no, motherfucker, I want DoorDash all the time. Send me my $1,200 every month. Send me my DoorDash and let me watch Netflix. I got 3 more seasons of Blacklist to watch. Whatever the fuck.
DoorDash sounds fire right now.
Shut up, Nicco, you fucking ruining it. But my point
Did you guys notice the smoke rolling earlier?
Yeah, right. This motherfucker gonna DoorDash some Cheetos. Oh, fuck, some hot fries.
Straight Caribbean food.
And let me be clear,
okay,
I'm
right.
jealous as fuck.
Oh shit. Well, anyway, so the point I was getting at though is that like we have this uncanny ability to be so afraid of the future that we will do everything that we can to prepare for a future that may not come because we're afraid that it might. And so you got tons of people who got like boxes of food stored up here and all this other stuff stored up. And I'm not saying like, don't get me wrong, like some of that shit is justified. I get it. But and the squirrels do it a little bit for the winter, but that's more like, hey, like, all right, so we do this time, then we eat through the winter, we're good, and then that's just like canning and all that stuff. Like, I get it. Some of that shit makes sense, but there's a lot of people, bulking up on some shit that's like way overkill because they're afraid. And it goes back to like some of this stuff is addressed in the Bible where there's the farmer who like fills up all the silos with grain and then he tears them down and builds bigger ones and fills all them up with grain. And God's like, you fool, you're going to die tonight. And what the hell's going to happen to all that stuff? And then comparing that to, the beasts of the field and the birds of the air, they neither gather nor sow, yet the Lord provides for them. All of their, everything is provided for them. So in a certain capacity, it's easier for them to both be anarchistic and communistic at the same time because they don't own anything. None of them own anything. And I get where like some of the anarcho-socialists and everything come from, where they think like, that's how it should all be. None of us should own anything. It's like, okay, I mean, I get it. The thing is though, there is a certain order to things that where when you start to actually mix your labor with the earth and you can actually create and build things and create shelter for yourself, because not every living thing on the planet can just like curl up under a tree and live there, and then insects bite you and you die and all this stuff. So we also have that dominion over the natural kingdom and also that ability to reason our way through solutions to some of that stuff so we don't die off as a species. So we have developed some of this stuff, and that's where like the specialization, all that stuff comes back into play. Mm-hmm. That we can be self-owned anarchs, and we can also voluntarily commune with people, but it doesn't have to make us communists, because when I look at the communism that I see in the animal kingdom, that's where I see this thing where it's like, yeah, you're going to do all this shit, and if you don't, I'll kill you. And you do see some of that stuff with the, like, there's like these chimpanzee colonies that will just like make their way through the jungle, and they'll just destroy and actually eat alive the other chimpanzees in the colony that they conquered. Mm-hmm. And so the animal kingdom is not necessarily the place to look to get our examples for how we should live. There's some inklings, and then there's also some warning signs, right? It's a
learn the good
of both.
and cast aside the bad.
Combination of all those.
Yeah, like if we disagree with somebody, we don't mangle them and then like leave them.
Right.
Like,
right.
All right, bud.
Yeah, I'm not gonna roll a turd around like a beetle. I'm not doing. I'm not doing. I don't care how awesome it is.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. But and I think that largely when people start talking about is why we don't generally do and never go full Rousseau. I am 100% with him. Like there's things.
That's what I was like. This is perfect.
There are things, but no, that dude's crazy. If you've never read Rousseau, people, just warning, he's all right, but he's kind of crazy. That dude's got some ish.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway. One of the things that people will notice when specifically talking about Aquarian anarchy as a anarchist philosophy, if you will, that we have gotten to, we use a lot of yellow and black and red. Those are the colors that we decided years ago that when I was first doing this, before Chad, that I was going to use. And I was trying to bring in the idea that, that we accept anarcho-capitalists and we accept anarcho-communists, that we don't really know. But what it's become is we're actually more of a black and white. In reality, I don't care what color you want to play in, because we don't actually know where this goes, because we have never lived in freedom. To go back to a Konkin quote, this has been part of us for 10,000 years. It is ingrained, it is brainwashed, it is part of who we are. We know about the state. The state has become this massive piece of us, and it is difficult for us to go outside of that. So when we do, and notice I said when, I think that Alice Bailey's correct that we will get to a stateless society. Hopefully in my lifetime, probably not, but I'd love for my kids to have it. But when we get there, we do not know what it's going to look like. We do not know when the state is removed. Maybe people don't own shit. I don't know. Because why? Maybe you wouldn't need to. I don't know. I'm not there.
Yeah, and we're not talking WEF Klaus Schwab, like you will own nothing and you will be happy. We're not even talking about that. I think there's some, and that's what's so scary about that stuff and so dangerous about it, is that there's, just like in everything else, there's always some little touch on something that is true and valid, but it's like, it's the wolf in sheep's clothing. It's the demon in angel's clothing. It's always something. Yeah, I'm still keeping my guns too. But it's always deceptive and deceitful. It's, yes, like there is, look at the deer. The deer don't own anything, but they are happy. They're also hunted and killed and like eaten a lot of times. So
by a higher species.
Sometimes, but I think that, yeah, ultimately, like if we think, I hate to quote Reagan, but he said, socialism only works in heaven where it's not needed, and what is it? And no, socialism only works in hell. I can't remember it. It's like that's what it is. It works in two places: heaven where it's not needed, and hell where it already exists, or something like that.
Right.
It's that sort of thing, something to that effect. But the thing is, like, we too often can get hung up on this, I don't know, this notion that like we have to know exactly what everything is going to look like. And I brought this up before we came on. We often get asked this thing like, when has anarchism ever been tried and succeeded? Show me an example. Give me an example where this has ever been implemented.
Ireland.
And everything. Yeah. So there's Ireland as an example that people bring up. Sharon, Mexico is an example that people bring up. There's some other examples throughout history. My response that I have decided on today that I am going to go to is to respond to that question with a question. When has statism ever worked? Show me an example where statism works, where no one gets killed, no one gets stolen from, no one gets unjustly imprisoned, no one gets threatened so that they don't, show me where under statism they have eradicated all sin and evil from the planet by stealing from people, murdering people, bombing people from distant, bunkers and submarines and shit like that. Show me where statism works. The challenge is on you, my friend, to tell me where this thing that you are defending has worked, so that we can say, oh, okay, well then that maybe that's the example that we'll do. And if you say America, I will remind you that America was created under slavery and that slavery still exists. So get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. And I do want to, that's great, and we'll move towards closing, but I do want to paraphrase what Voltaire de Cleyre said in relation to that. And that was anarchists would give away all of our theories and our ideas if you could show us something that worked better. And statism isn't it. So if you'd like this, watch a bunch of our other videos, because this one was about us.
That's right.
And I want to again say that I am blessed to have these two gentlemen by my side. They are, as the manosphere goes, if you will, they are the best of the best. And I don't know where I would be or how I would make it without them, because both Nicco and Chad are, they're my brothers. And I am just blessed to have met them and to have the pleasure of sharing this space with them every Wednesday night at 6:30. You guys got anything else?
Blessings. No, I always got to appreciate everybody coming out and spending their time with us. You could be doing something else, but you decide to catch up with us and listen to what we got to say. So that's much appreciated, much love. And if you make it through the playback, we appreciate it. And most definitely pay attention to these comments. Sketch is looking like he dropping some bombs over here, son.
For sure.
But no, this is actually a fun episode, going in and dwelling in the topic of what we initially stand on, but to a much more in-depth point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, I very much appreciate the audience, both the people who join us live every week and joined us live here tonight, and dropped their comments in and kind of kept the chat lively, but also the people who watch this on replay and the folks who have been with us from the very beginning or very near the beginning, especially, but definitely all the newcomers as well, because it's been really fun to continue to share these ideas with new ideators, so to speak. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that I love you two gentlemen. Like I echo what Marcus said. You guys are like brothers to me. And at any point, if there's anything I can do to help either one of you, you got me, and I got you. And I think that so much of this stuff that we talk about can seem academic and abstract, but like in a very concrete way. Like we have a community that like supports each other, and we are trying as best we can to actually live this stuff on a day-to-day basis with each other and with the people who are part of our community. And so I just don't want to let that go unsaid, because that's part of the answer to this question: what is Aquarian Anarchy? It's a community of people who like respect each other, love each other, and want what's best for each other, and will do whatever they can within their capabilities to help make that happen.
Amen.
Thanks.
So with that said, everybody,
wait, before you say that, I have to do this, because this has to precede what you're about to say.
Okay. All right, everybody.
Right?
What?
That's from Braveheart, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody stay free.
Peace, y'all.